Hello, I am Kiatrik. I am a trainer for making games with Construct 2. I am a moderator on Skara.com forums. I'm an indie game maker and game designer enthusiast. I'm making this video tutorial today for Envato Game Dev Tuts Plus. In today's tutorial we are going to make a Missile Command prototype. Missile Command is one of the first games that was released in arcades and put you in a protection role. You are protecting cities, so in this version you will be protecting buildings against falling meteor, or in the original game it was nuclear missiles, and for this one it's kind of alien ships or meteors. I'm not a very good artist, as you can say, but the important there is just the implementations of the mechanics. So you have 3 towers which can spawn rockets which cause an explosion which cause the meteor to disappear. And you can see there is a kind of cooldown when it's red, when the cursor is red, between the different shots. And when a meteor is either colliding with a tower or a building, it's simply destroying the tower or the building and the meteor and the little trail, the little particle trail. You can see as score we have simply the time spent actually on the game, which is considered as the current score. The goal being to be able to survive the longest possible and to protect your cities, your buildings and towers as long as possible. And from the moment you have lost either all the towers or all your buildings, so we will wait a bit for that right now. Here it is. The game stops. It tells you have survived for a certain amount of seconds. You can restart the game by right clicking, and you can see that in game over mode, if you will, you can shoot and no new meteors are spawned. And right click, you start again. So now we are making the game. Click on new project in the start page. We will store project in single file kpix. Create a new project. First thing first, we need to put a few settings for our project. Give it a name. Give the name of the author. And change the size. We will go in 800 by 600. Select the layout. Change its size to the same as the project. So now you can see in our layout view, this is going to be the final size of our project. You go in the layers tab. We will rename this one background. Set its color to black and create a new layer which we called GUI or Guy, which we'll use. Now we need to add the mouse plugin, as this is going to be our controls. The game is going to be controlled only with the mouse. And select the guy layer and double clicking to add a new object. We make a sprite open to open a texture. It's going to be in the pack I provide, and you can find the link in the text. First, import cursornorm.png. This is the origin point. And by default, you can see it's in the middle of the texture, which is what I want. And this is the collision polygon. It will check for the collisions. Actually, for this object in particular, we won't need to check for its collisions. So a right click and set the bounding box is more than enough, and just use 4 points in memory. We will slide the object outside of the layout, rename it cursor, make sure it's on the layer guy, and in the event sheet we will right click, add an event. It's on start of layout in the system. You add an action, mouse, set cursor style to none. This will make that the default cursor of the mouse, and the one you can see here, it is an arrow, now it's a hand, etc., won't be appearing at all. And adding a new event, so you can either click on add event or right click add event. Another system event, which is every tick. Every tick means that every frame that the game is running, this action, the actions will execute. So in the cursor we set position, and it is to mouse.x and mouse.y, the x and y positions in the layout. If I make a preview right now, here it is. So you can see the cursor of the mouse, and the regular cursor appears when you are out of the project window, and where you are in the window there is no cursor except for the image we've been doing. Then we will add the tower. Make another sprite, open it, it's tower2.png. A little thing about construct2 is that the default angle, when the angle is 0, images are supposed to be oriented to the right. So to work right now, I will use just rotate a bit so it's pointing to the right. You can see the polygon polygon at the moment is pretty much already nice. I will just have to move the origin point, and I'm going to set it on the left, which actually will be, in the logic of my game, will be quite of the bottom of the tower. So I click out, rename tower, put an angle of 270, means now it's pointing up, and the position is 72 by 500. I don't need more settings, so right now I can make new instances. So I'm holding the control key down, and just drag dropping to make a new instance. This one will be at 400 and 512. Another time I'm creating a new instance, and it's 72 512. I found these values by tweaking and making already a first project and checking for the best positions in my opinion and what I wanted to do. So that's how we can quickly go with this one. I'm going to have to make a few modifications to the event sheet. For right now, I just want the towers to point at the cursor. So right now I need only a little action. Towers, tower, set angle toward position, and cursor.x, cursor.y. Little mistake, here it is. So first, every tick I will set the position of the cursor to the mouse position, to the mouse cursor, which we can't see but still exists for construct 2. And then the towers, we set the angle of the towers toward the position of the cursor. So let's test it out. Hey, working as intended. Almost. You can see when I go out of the project, the towers are still following the mouse, as well as when I go under, which is what I don't want in the end. The buildings are supposed to go here and here. I don't want to be able to shoot or to move the towers in this space, in this position. And I don't want, if I'm going out of the project, that the towers follow also the mouse. So for that I will have to add a sub-event, and we'll actually check for the cursor positions. So we will compare x, make sure it's greater than 0, and actually I will hold down the control key, drag drop the condition, and it's making a new condition on the same of the same type. And for the x position, which is the horizontal position, I will make sure that it is not out of the layout. So I want to check that the mouse cursor, the cursor x position, is less than the layout width. At the same time, I will check those, select those two. Holding down the control key allows to select, several conditions. Drag drop, and now I'm going to check back here, compare the y position. It has to be greater than 0, which is good, but for the final, it's not the layout height exactly I want rather, for now I know that I've positioned my towers to 512, and so I make it, and I'll select and set the angle, which means now that every tick the cursor position will be checked, and if it's in the boundaries I'm wanting, it will make the tower point toward the cursor. So you can see, and I'm going out of the project, you see it's not moving. It's not moving, and there it's not moving anymore either. And back to our event sheet. I've just checked out to make sure what value was supposed to be the lowest y to make the towers move, and it's 455. Also, just a little modification to do: select all the tower instances by holding down the control key and clicking them, and put them in the layer background. So now we are going to add the enemies. Go in the layers tab, select background, go back in the layout view, double click, make a new sprite, open, and Meteor.png. We'll make sure the origin point is in the middle and the collision polygon, excuse me, is circle by default, which is pretty much what we want. Rename the sprite to Meteor, and we will be adding a new behavior. The behavior we want there is the bullet behavior, which will make the object move by itself every tick without us needing to add any code to it. It's handled directly by construct. And we will also take advantage of the new WebGL shadows effects. So I'm clicking effects and adding, I will add a glow effect, which is, where is it? Glow horizontal and glow vertical. So first horizontal and then vertical. And there it is. What happens now is that the spawning of the meteors is relatively random. So I will add an event, another time in system, it's an every X seconds, but instead where X is the value, the interval value, but there instead of putting a single defined value, I will put a range and randomize it. So I will use system expressions. Int will make everything in between the parentheses returns an integer value, and random and 3 to 7, closing the parenthesis. So every 3 to 7 seconds I will have the system create an object. The object is going to be the meteor. The layer is going to be background. I'm using the string and quotes. I could have left the 0 because, as you can see there, 0 is the background layer. But if I'm moving the layers at any point, I will have to modify it if I'm using the numeric values, whereas if I'm using the string, the name of the layer, whatever the position of the layer is and its number is, it will still refer to the correct layer. So X, once again, it's a randomized value I want there, and it's about the layout width. So it will pick a random value in the boundaries from 0 to the size of our layout, which is 800 for the X value. And for the Y value, I want it on top of the screen, out of the layout. So I'm going to put a negative, and I'm putting a negative 48, since the meteor is 32 by 32. I'm sure that it won't spawn directly on screen and give the impression it's coming from above. For now, I will have to add a new condition, add another condition to our event, and it will be tower. Nope, it's in the system. System, pick a random instance of tower. And so I will make it so that the angle of motion of the meteor, which is the angle that the movement will go to, will be actually angle. I'm using there the self keyword, which refers to the instance in course. So right now it will be the newly spawned meteor instance. So self.x and self.y, and then tower.x, tower.y. And the tower there will be the randomly picked instance by this event. And so this means that the meteor will go directly up to a tower randomly picked, randomly selected, and on a random interval of seconds. Check it out, press F5. So you can see the meteor is a bit quick at the moment. So I will also add there a meteor and set the speed. It's important there, it's already in the its actions of the bullet behavior, because that's the event, that's the behavior, that's what is taking care of the movement itself. Just to put it to 25. Let's put it to 25. Also, you may have noticed that our first meteor will just go right on the right at the very start. So on start of the layout, I would just go and destroy the instance. So it will pick the only instance that we have in our currently in our layout and destroy it so it doesn't appear. So if I'm previewing right now, no first instance, and we're waiting. Here it is, new meteors going down right at this tower. This one is directed at this one to this one. It's working as intended. Nice. Making a new object and selecting particles. I'm going to put them out at the screen, and I'm just going to draw them right now. What I want is first to resize, because what I need is actually only an 8 by 8 kind of object. I'm picking the filler tool. I'm picking a yellow color and filling. That's it. I don't need in the particles, you can't set collision polygons, you can't set image points or origin points. It's just not useful. There I'm renaming to M particles to remind me that it's for the meteor. It's on the layout background, which is nice. And now I'm going to add a behavior to it, and it's going to be the pin behavior, which will allow me on spawning of the meteor to spawn also particles and pin it right on the meteor, so the meteor will be moving, and each tick automatically the particles will also be moving along with the meteor, which is pretty cool. I won't have to do anything else than just pinning on the creation. I'll show you in a minute. Well, I'll show you actually just right now. In the same event that I'm spawning the meteor, I will now also create object, M particles. So yeah, here it is. M particles on the layer background, and the X will be meteor.x and the Y will be meteor.y, and this there is referring to the instance, the meteor instance we just created. The angle of the particles. So I want my particles angle to be the opposite of the meteor's angle. So I'm using meteor.angle, but to get the opposite I need to add 180 degrees to it and make sure with the modulo that it's in the 360 range. The particles to be pinned to the meteor in position and angle, and finally I will have to move the particles to the bottom of the layer because I want it to be under the newly spawned meteor. So let's check it out. And so now here it is. I'm having a flamboyant meteor. Going back to construct and selecting the particles object. So here it is in the properties. You have the rate, and as you can see in the properties you always have a little help at the bottom to explain you what the currently selected property is. It's really interesting and be sure to check it out most of the time. So rate I will keep to 15. The spray cone I will move to 45. I want it to be a continuous spray indeed, and I will change the speed to 125, and I will change the size to 2. I'm going to check. I'm going to make just a little try right now. We will make the size to 8. The opacity don't move. Grow rate, it's not moving. Angle randomizer will be 25. The speed randomizer will be only, yep, here it is, 400. And the opacity randomizer will be 25. I'm fading to invisible and it's okay. Let's check it out. Waiting for it. It's coming. It's nice. I think I'll keep it to what I had originally. In fact, the size has to be a bit lower since you're seeing it as a square. So it's only a 2. But another little trick, if you want, would be in the blend mode, and I will put the blend mode to additive. Checking out. It's rather sweet. I like the little particles, but as you have seen, you can just modify a value, a simple value, and modify a great deal of how your game is looking. Now I want the towers to be able to spawn rockets, and when the rockets have reached their target, they will spawn an explosion. Explosion which, in collisions with Meteor, will destroy the meteors. But right now, I need first to have rockets shooting from the top of the towers. So I will add a new object, sprite, open it and put the texture rocket 2. To zoom, I'm holding the control key and moving my mouse wheel to zoom in and zoom out. And you have the percentage of zoom in the left bottom corner. Making sure of my origin point in the middle of the texture. This is what I want. And right now, for the collision polygon will be a little twist there. I don't want the whole object to be responsive in terms of collision. What I mainly want is when the middle zone, the middle area of my rocket will be hitting the target, then I want it to explode and make the new explosion. So right now I'm just putting my collision points about where I want, and I will press delete on the selected point to remove them. I only need 4 points. It's enough about this little corner, which is around the origin. Here it is. Rename it to rocket. In behavior, we will add bullet behavior, because the rockets are going to move by themselves also. Let me check quickly what else. The speed is 40. No, yes. Okay, nothing more to change, so I'll just put it out of the screen, and like the Meteor, and so like the Meteor, I will want to destroy the first instance on the start of the project. Well, no, excuse me, I don't want it. I will in fact use another behavior, which is destroy outside of layout. This way it's automatically destroying at the moment the rocket is outside of the layout. I didn't use this behavior on the Meteor because I'm spawning the Meteor outside of the layout, and I want them to move from outside of the layout. If I've used this on the moment my Meteor was spawning, it would be destroyed, and so it would end as if no Meteor was ever spawning, which is not what I want. And so I need also to add another object, which will be our target. So using the target texture, you could just stay with the currently proposed collision polygon or set to bounding box. It doesn't really matter at the moment because the target is quite small and our collision polygon for the rocket is also a little bit and quite small. And finally, I will want to add another new object. No, not save. Open. And explosion, which is just a cycle. making sure the image point is in the center, everything's fine. So rocket, renaming the target as target, and explosion. The target needs no behavior, but I will have to add an instance to it, an instance variable, and which will be called hits. For now stayed at 0, but because when I will be clicking, I will in fact spawn a target as well as spawn a rocket for each towers. So the target being black over black, I won't need to hide it, even if I can still make it invisible just to make sure. And so when I will be clicking, I will be spawning a target point where I'm clicking. I will be spawning rockets on top of each towers, and then the rocket will be directed to the target, and when the rockets will be on collision with the target and that the target, its number will be up to 3, then it means that it has been hit by all the rockets it should be eaten with, and so then it will disappear. Let's make it happen in the event. So I want mouse on click, on left click. I will want to create object. It will be a target in the layer as usual background, and it will be at mouse.x and mouse.y, or cursor. I could use the same, it would just be okay. And then also I will add, so you select the event, right click, add a sub event, which is going to be for each tower. So it means that it's a loop that will act for each instances of the tower type object. And then I want the tower to, is it the tower? No, I'm going to use the system still. System create object. I want to create a rocket. I want to create it on the background layer, and x has to be tower.x, tower.y. The rocket angle of motion, pretty much like the Meteor earlier, will be set to angle self.angle. So right now it's the rocket, still because I'm setting the properties for the rocket object. So no, not angle, self.x, self.y, target.x, target.y, and this will be orientated as expected, and the rocket speed, no, so still for the bullet object will be 65. I will make it first, by the way, right here the same, and at last, excuse me, I need to add an instance variable to the rocket too. It will be named target UID, and at the spawning there I will set the value of target UID to target.uid. This way I'm going to make sure that the rocket is hitting the correct target, So let's have a quick test just to make sure. Yeah, right now it's spawning rockets, but as you can see, the rockets are spawned from the image point, from the origin point of the towers, and I'd rather have them spawned from the top of the tower. Make a little modification in our tower object. In the image point, we will be adding a new image point and setting it to the top of the tower. Just to make sure, press the 6 key on your numeric keypad, and it's putting the image point on the right and in the middle of the texture. It's automatically done for you. So there, and finally what I want here is not tower.x, but rather the image point position. So tower image point x, and here the number of the image point we've just created is 1. The origin point is always 0. And same for the y position, image point y 1. And if I'm testing again, here it goes from the top instead of the bottom, which is pretty cool. So now we will add some more events, and we will check the collision between the rockets and rocket on collision with target. So when a rocket hits a target, and also adding another condition to make sure that target UID that is set in the rocket is the current target.uid. So it means that on collision between a rocket and a target, and that the rocket target UID value, which is stored, it's an instance variable value stored in the rocket, is the current UID of the current target in collision. And when this happens, I want to destroy the rocket. I want the target to spawn, this time, an explosion on the layer background and at the image point 0. Everything's fine. I will first there set the explosion size, set size to 2 by 2, and target, adding to the instance variable hits of the targets 1, just to make sure that it has been reached. And actually I'm adding a sub event there, target, and I'm comparing instance variable hits and the value, make sure it's equal to tower.count, because each tower will have spawned a rocket, and when I will have lost some tower, I just want the targets to be still on the good number. This might need a bit refining a bit later. We will come back to it. And so when the numbers are equals, I just want to destroy the target. And now I will have to make a few more configuration to our explosion object. So first thing first, behavior. I will add a behavior to it. I want the explosion to fade, and we have just the perfect behavior just for that. It's the fade behavior. I don't want it to be activated at start though. and I want it to fade in 2 seconds, and it will be destroyed right after fade out. I don't want the fade to start first because I first want the explosion to grow from the size we've set there, 2.2, to its normal size, if you will, 48 by 48. And I'm even wondering, no, I will even go to up to 64 by 64. So I will add it in event, add an event explosion, and I'm checking for the height, and it's less than 64, and just checking for the height because there the size is square. I mean, the height and the width are going to be the same value to keep the square aspect looking. And so there the explosion sets the size, so the width is self.width plus 64 multiplied by dt, and for the y, for the height, it's the same thing, plus 64 multiplied by dt. dt is a system value, sort of variable if you want, which give you the time that has passed between the current frame and the previous frame, the current tick and the previous tick. And so multiplying a value by dt allows you to have the correct growth over a second. I mean, with this formula there, what I want and what I will get is in fact that in a second I will have had 64 to the current value, the current height and the current width. And once the height of the explosion, so I will just control drag drop because it's pretty much the same thing. When the height is greater or equal to 64, I want not to modify the size but to start the fade, and from there I won't have to worry anymore about the explosion because it's going to fade by itself and get destroyed when it's invisible. Just a little thing to prevent this action from being executed every tick, because every tick normally in our logic the explosion height will be superior or equal to 64. So to prevent the state to be the fade to be started every tick, I will add another condition and check for the opacity and make sure it's equal to 100, because from the moment the fade will have started, the opacity will be less than 100, and so the conditions will be false, and so this condition won't happen anymore. So let's try it out. I'm shooting. Interesting. I guess it's a spawn explosion. So in fact, instead of spawn, I will create object explosion, background, and use the target.x and target.y. Normally it should be okay, hopefully. Here it is, and it's fading at the end. Now I will have to add some cooldown though, because at the moment I can just spam click, if you will, and just have a massive cloud of explosions, which is what I don't really want. So to make this cooldown, I will make a global variable. So right click in the event sheet, add global variable, and it's named T cooldown for tower cooldown. And I will then also have to make a few modifications. First, I will add a frame there in the cursor object. The cursor denied, just to have a visual to tell me that I'm not allowed to shoot or to move the towers at that point. Selecting the animation, setting the speed to 0. This will then make sure that it's not always trying to play the animation, just playing the frame I need. So here it is. I will add here. So yeah, just cooldown is not starting at 0 but -1. And there add another condition. System compare variable T cooldown equal to -1. Also, I will change this to cursor set frame to 0, meaning that my animation, that I will be allowed to do whatever I want to position the rockets, the towers, excuse me, and add a sub-event system else. This else there means that if the conditions of the previous event, this selected event, are false, then it will execute this event, those actions, and the action there will actually be set the frame to 1. But if this event is executed, this event won't. That's the meaning of else, and that's why you need to place it right under there. And so finally I will add a last sub-event, and I will be checking for the frame of my cursor, and if the frame, the animation frame, is 0, then I want the towers to be moved. Also, on the left button I will add another condition, compare variable -1. So when I will be clicking and that the cooldown is -1, meaning that I can shoot, then I will be creating a target, etc. And so I will just have to set the value T cooldown to 0. There. So the cooldown is set to 0, which is not -1. Which also means that if I'm making an event checking, comparing the variable, T cooldown is not equal to -1. So from the moment I left click, it's not equal to -1 anymore. And what I want to do there is to add dt to cool down every tick. Here it is. And what I also want is once t cooldown is greater or equal to 1.75. It's not there, I've made a mistake, it's a set value to -1. This should be okay. Yes, as you can see, from the moment the cursor is getting back to being white. Nice. As I said previously, the target its number relies on the tower count, and it can be actually quite a mistake. So I will modify it a bit. I will add another instance variable, and or rather to the target. To the target. Add another one and call it toHit. And this value will be actually the value that I will set here. Instead of tower count, I will use self.toHit, and on the left click, where is it? It's there. I will set this value toHit to tower.count. So this means that at the moment I'm spawning and creating the target, I will have automatically the number of instances of the tower applied to as value to the toHit instance variable. It means that the target will expect the toHit number before getting destroyed, which means that if I'm spawning a rocket and targets, and then my one of my tower gets destroyed, still the correct number of rocket is expected for the target to be destroyed. Now I need to add some finishing touch. I make a new sprite, and it's actually the building. So the size is 48 by 64. 48 by 64, and it's 542. And the first instance is at 180. Here it is. I'm making new instances. Second is 242. 242. There are 304. I'm selecting them, making them around here, and putting it. It should be okay. One pixel. 66, 5, and 7 there. Okay. Renaming it to building, and this is the element we want to protect, and actually it hasn't any kind of behavior, any kind of variable, any kind of pretty much no interaction actually. And now I will have to check for the meteor collisions, adding an event and on collision with another object. So first I will check for explosion, and when a meteor collides with an explosion, I want the meteor to get destroyed, obviously, and I also want the particle accompanying the meteor to be destroyed either. So I will have to make first a little modification to the M particles. I will add an instance variable and call it Meteor UID, pretty much like what we did for the targets And the rockets, I need to make sure that the UID is associated with. So on spawning, it's right there. And particles, I set the value Meteor UID to Meteor.UID. So I've set it on creation, so the M particles will hold the UID property value of the meteor, and when I have a collision of a meteor, I will add another condition and just pick, thanks to the Meteor UID .UID, and there I'm just destroying the meteor and destroying the particles, and to make sure it's working. There you can see it, particles of meteor, and up everything goes down, everything disappears, the meteor and the particle. We also need to check the collision between the meteor, so it's pretty much the same thing, but there I will just change to tower and actually destroy the tower also. And the last collision we want to check is with the building, and actually it's the same. We want the building to be destroyed. I will check for the Y position of the meteor, and if it's greater than 630, which means that it will be out of the screen at the bottom and won't have anything to do, but for construct it's still in memory, so I need to destroy it at that moment. Okay, before moving on, I have some modifications to make. So first modification, here on the spawning of the meteor and particles, I'm just picking a tower and not buildings. So I will add a blank sub-event. I will also right there clone these conditions by holding down the control key, drag dropping down, and pick a building. I will also use a global variable which I'll name M direction. It's for the meteor, and actually there I will set the value M direction to int random 2, which means this formula right there, that M direction will either be 0 or 1, and according to the value of M direction, if it's 0 I want it, then I want the meteor to point in direction of the tower, but if it's 1 I want it to point in the direction of the building. Once again, the instance tower or building is the random instance picked by those two conditions. I will check it out just to make sure. So yeah, you can see this meteor will be in direction of those buildings. It's not aiming for any of the tower, it's really aiming for the buildings. And when it's colliding with the building disappears as well as the meteor. Same for the tower. And you can see right there, up, it's also disappearing when it's at the bottom. Also, I've realized I have a few limitations there, just stuff that doesn't really be nice. I'm changing the Y position at which the meteor is created to -32, which means that I won't have to wait as long for the meteor to come on the screen. Also, these conditions there, actually the meteors are just spawned every 3 seconds. So I'm making another variable, an spawn time for name, and I will do this so I will just keep it in memory by cutting it, and spawn time, and every spawn time seconds I will be setting the value of spawn time right there. And actually I don't need anymore the int figure, because I can have some values change this way. Okay, now I want to add some score under the form of a text object that will display the time that has passed since the beginning of the game. So add a text object, and actually it's not for the background, it will be for the GUI layer. Text for now I will just name survive and modify the color. Put it at white, obviously. That's pretty much what we want. Horizontal alignment. I will put it to centered, which allows us to make the text object wide as the layout, and be sure it will be in the dead center. The text will be in the dead center. Rename it txt time, and have a little modification. So in the system every tick, I will just, no, first I need to add another global variable, which is name time survived. And then in every tick I want txt time set text to be you survived for a space, excuse me, and time survived and seconds. And what I want also is add an event system every 1 second. I want to simply add 1, 2 time survived. Here it is. And if you test, here it goes, you survived 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, now what we need is to handle the losing conditions. Actually, you can't really win my style command. It's not meant to be beaten. You are to lose at some point. And so we will have some game over conditions check. Add an event and system compare two values, and we will check for the building.count number, and when it's equal to 0, but we will also make this OR block and add another condition. And actually no, we just clone the previous condition and change building to tower, which means that when either the building count is equal to 0 or the tower count, when either one of them is equal to 0, meaning you don't have any more towers or you don't have any more buildings to defend, then the game will be over. We will be in game over. Add a global variable named game state, and it's not a number, it's a text, and its default value is in-game. Make sure it will be case sensitive, so make sure to use the caps where you need the capital letters to be really precise. And as a sub-event, we will check for the game state to be equal to in-game. And the first thing we do is to set game state to game over. And we will have to modify quite a few things along the way. There, I want also to hide the text time, visible to invisible, and I will have to add a new text object also, and same, I will put it on the Y, white color, in big in the middle of the screen, centered, and actually really big, so checking about 16. Still using Arial is just for the tutorial. When you're making your own games, you can pick nicer fonts or even use web fonts, Google's web fonts. So this is named txt and so I will want txt end to be visible. Where is it? Set visible to visible. And I also want to txt end to set the text to you survived for and time survived and seconds. And I'm also adding a new line which allows to go to the next line and tell the player that right click to start again, or rather to start a new game. Better. And so I will have to add this event, not in system, a mouse event on click, but this time it's on right click. Also, I will have to make sure that the game state is equal to game over, because I don't want this to happen during the normal play. And in the system, you reset the global variables to default and system restart layout. Simple as that. There, I will add this condition there that it's in game also. To time survived, I can also copy and paste, and I will paste right there on the spawning on meteors to make sure that the game is actually playing. And we will actually do the same for the left button click. If it's game over, I don't want to be able to shoot rockets or whatever. In the layout, you want the end text, the txt end, to be invisible. You don't want it to be visible at first. So now let's test. So we know the collisions work, right? It's protecting, so now we'll have to wait a bit for the game to hit the game over conditions. So here it is. I survived for 68 seconds. I'm asked to right click to start a new game. You can see that no meteors are being spawned. I'm right clicking and here it goes again. Right from the start, and the first meteor to spawn at 4 seconds. I think we have our working prototype here.